Hello, Picasso, or Michelangelo, or Leonardo, Shredder? Well, whichever mutant ninja turtle you might be. Since Alpha 16 was introducing painting your homes and bases has been a huge thing. It's no longer just restricted to a few buildable material colors, putting down your concrete block or your wood or something. Now we can make our places look really great. Coupled with putting down, placeable items like toasters and microwaves or pool tables and stuff like that. Well, you've checked out my expanded deco modelet, right? So you can craft all and use all those vanilla assets like pool table and what have you. With all that, you can make your base look really, really good. Now, there are some changes to Alpha 20 compared to previous versions, and I will be covering those. So make sure you paint over that like button and subscribe so we can get our canvas nice and ready. Now, first off, a change to earlier versions, and this only applies to creative mode gameplay, meaning you have to be in creative mode that I have enabled here. It won't help in survival, but if you're doing creative builds, it will come in handy. Now, pick one of those blocks that you have and hold R. You'll see something that allows you to change the materials. So let's change it to, let's do the brick pavers. You put it down. You're effectively pre-painting it before you are putting down this block. And this can be really helpful when you're making big builds and you want to have a different material. In this case, it's concrete, but I want to make it look like concrete. And I don't want to take all that trouble to paint it afterwards. Maybe I want to have something like that, adobe, etc. And it looks nice. It looks as if you painted it, but it just saves you time. Really helpful. But let's go back and look at the basics of painting, meaning survival. So I'm going to turn off the creative mode here, turn off debug mode as well. So I'm just in survival as usual. And it's great to be able to just remodeling your base. And you see here, this is a little small little cottage that I just put together. This is how it looks prior to painting it. I mean, it's got the basic shapes. It's nothing special, but it looks really dull and drab. And, being able to just paint it, selecting the texture and painting it, changing the wallpaper, maybe the floor, some fall appliances would be really good. To accomplish this, there are a couple things you need to do. You need a paintbrush and you need paint. And a paintbrush is pretty simple. You go to your crafting and you do a paintbrush. And of course, I don't have any leather, which means I have to go and grab some leather. Oh, no, it's not leather. Come on, give me my leather. Here we go. So I lied when I said I'm not going to be creative because I'm not going to go and find an animal. So all you do is you craft it. And of course, I don't have any wood either. But now I do, so I can craft it. Just a little bit of wood and a little bit of leather. So it's super easy to actually get the paintbrush. Now we of course also need paint. How do you get paint? Two ways. You can either craft it in your campfire, which is the simpler, easy way you'll learn, or you can make it in your chemistry station. And if you do it in your campfire, do keep in mind, however, to see here, if I try to craft it, this one, it requires the cooking pot. So let me put in a cooking pot. Now you can, one like that. We can do craft, and it requires chrysanthemum, some murky water. It doesn't take too long. You actually get quite a lot of paint, and it's definitely worthwhile to just get some up. Because now that it only requires murky water and chrysanthemum, it's super simple. Some of the earlier versions you require cotton and golden flour as well, and goldenrod flour, and that was just more inconvenient. Now it's really simple: water and some chrysanthemum. You can, of course, loot paint as well, and if you find a lot of dye, you can actually scrap them as well. It'll give you a little bit of paint, not too much. You probably won't be able to repaint your whole home unless you find a lot of them, but at least it allows you to get started. The way to get started, of course, you pick up your paintbrush, and then you hold R. That gives you this radial menu where you select M for materials, where you do paintbrush, which is the size of the painting, paint roller, which paints a larger area, paint the surface, we'll get through that one as well. It actually paints the whole surface, which is really convenient. Paint all sides, which does exactly what it says. It paints all sides of a block. And texture picker, which allows you to steal the texture from some block. So we start with just material. You select that, and let's do something for the floor in here. And let's say we want to have a dope peach. It looks pretty okay. You'll see it's a group, doesn't really matter, but you see the paint cost here. Some of them require more cost, and see if we can find any that requires 2, here's 3. Metal usually are a little bit larger. Most of them are 1. Some metal are 3, and I think there's a couple that are 2 as well, but most are just 1, which is convenient. And once you've done that, escape out and you right click to actually paint it. Right click, right click. If you get something wrong, you left click and it'll wipe it off and erase it from whichever block you have put it in. If we go back to R here, we can do the paint roller, select that. And the way you select it is that you hold R and then you release R over the actual selection. You don't click necessarily, you basically just release R. Now we have the paint roller, I right click, you'll see it does a large area. And it works for wiping it out as well. It's really good when you're making big areas. Let's say I want to make this surface, it'll basically cover a larger area, which makes it a lot easier. You see, you can end up getting on the sides as well because it doesn't just do one surface, and that's what we'll get to in a little bit when you're doing this surface. So let's just wipe this out as well. Come on, let's get rid of this extra stuff that we don't want to have. We're going to go back to single and we're going to go back to the paint all sides. Let's say I want to do this block. And I'm going to choose something else, something more appropriate. Let's say I want to have, let's do this. Sometimes you might want to paint them individually, but in this case, let's say you want to do paint all sides. You select that and it'll paint all the sides at once, including actually this side that you normally can't see, which is actually super helpful. And it's not always going to be something you use, but if you have, let's say you put in a glass block already, and the alternative is to leave it like this or to take out the glass block, which in this case is bulletproof glass, which is annoying. But if you paint all sides, you can actually paint it the color you want to have. Let's say you want to have it like this, and the little color. You can do that fairly easily by just painting the block and doing all sides. I use that all the time when I forget to paint it before I put in my other blocks. A new feature for Alpha 20 is paint surface. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do paint surface. Now, what does that do? Let's select something that we want to have. Let's do brick pavers. If I then click here, it chooses basically all these items, all these blocks that are on the same surface, and it'll paint it. Super useful when you're trying to do a larger area without sort of splashing paint all over. Let's say I want to do the front here. Let's select some more wood again. Do that. It's not going to splash anywhere behind, but it's going to do this whole surface. Now you notice here, it does take quite a lot of paint because I'm doing this whole surface, but it's definitely worth it not having to spend all that extra time to paint it. Now, interestingly is that this one doesn't get painted because this one was painted before, but at least you get something started. I want to do, and not that, not top ceiling, these. I'm going to do here. Nice. Don't have to worry about individually doing, but you notice it doesn't do this because it's a different surface, different alignment, but at least that looks pretty good. Really, really useful when you're building. So while we can select the texture by holding R and go to materials, there's a faster way of doing it. Let's say I want to paint this one. I don't want to go and select it in the material because it's a little bit slow. I can look at this, hold R, and do texture picker. You notice down here, every time I change the paint or the texture, it'll look like the texture that I've selected. And now I can just paint that. If I want to do that, I can paint that here, which is much faster than going to the selector. Of course, if you want to quick going into the material selector, just hitting R, you actually get here. But again, scrolling through all these to finding whichever you want to have is a lot slower than simply looking at it, do texture picker, and repainting. I use that all the time. Well, let's head over to creative mode to get some additional options. So we're going to do CM here. We're going to go back to our paintbrush and hold R. You'll see there's a little bit of extra options here. One of them is copy block, which is over on this side. So what we do is make sure you have a little bit of space in your hotbar and you aim at a block and then you hold R and you do copy block. You'll notice I got the same block because it's just a concrete tube, and even better, actually is pre-painted. So if you have different paints on different sides, and let me do that. Let's do that, and let's see what we're going to do on the inside. I have some ugly wallpaper here. That maybe on the side here we'll have something like this. If I then do, and let's toss them out, copy block, I put it down, you'll see the difference here. Where it's actually maintaining the actual paint on all the sides. I use this all the time when I'm making creative bases, especially, you know, for making videos and everything, because I'm just showing off the concept. Saves me a lot of time. I paint up a block and then I just grab it and I just use that when I'm building without having to paint individual sites over and over and over again. We also have the concept of, let's see where it is, replace paint. And this one is a little bit of a weird thing, but it's actually really useful. Again, it's only creative. So now you see, you look at, I have this texture and it says the next painted texture will be replaced in the current prefab, which is if you're in the prefab editor, which we're not, we're in a survival game, or selection. So if I just right click here, you'll see nothing happens because, well, I didn't have any selection. So what we're going to do something like this. We're going to flap a little bit here. We're going to select here and we do that by Z. I selected that and then I'm going to do an endpoint that here. So this is my selection. You notice this whole area, which is pretty much all the bottom of my base. Now if I then I hold this one and I'll change to a different type. I'll do wood siding blue and I paint this. Oh, of course I forgot to do the place paint. I paint this. You'll see all of this actually ends up being changed. The whole thing is changed. Everything within the selection, not outside of the selection, of course, but everything within the selection has been changed to blue. So if you make a building and you go like, I wonder how this will look with blue instead of white, this is how you do it. And then to get rid of the box, you hit delete, or backspace rather, and now I can just fine tune and fix that one up. So now I have white here and blue. And again, to make a selection, as you hit Z once and then you do Z for the second, and it basically creates this tube, and backspace to remove it. So now I have a two colored, well, of at least of the wood, but it didn't change anything else because it was only replacing the paint that I was aiming at with a new paint. Isn't that useful? I wish we had that for non-creative mode as well. And let's go to look at some tips and tricks. Remember, you can actually paint your storage boxes. So I put it on a couple of storage boxes, and these are not the writable one. Simply select a texture that you want to have. Let's say you want to make that a medical box. Simple. You want to have a supply for your food. Paint that. I do that all the time because even though you can write food on it, you can write medical, it looks better and it's a lot easier on the eyes than to pick up and go like, yes, this is the supply of food and this is your medical box. Of course, I use the writable storage box as well, but this is really useful. What I would love them to do is allow you to paint not just on top of it, because if you look at the texture, it's basically doing all of it, but I would love to have that sign on top of a different texture. I'm not sure how they would accomplish that in the code, but it would be really nice if you can sort of have that as the icon that you're pasting on top of something else, and with a transparent background, so you can change it. Let's say you want to have a concrete, or you want to have something else on it. But you can use this trick as something else as well. Let's say I want to do this, and let's select something like that, make it an oven, and have that. Do this, then I put the burners. Where are the burners? Up here. So now you have a storage box that looks like it's an oven with burners and everything, and you can basically put all your food inside. That looks better than this actually when you're making your home, so that's an alternative as well. We also have the issue, you know, it's something that they have tried to fix, but it's not that easy to fix. You see, you have this gap here, and that looks really ugly, and it's really inconvenient as well when you're having them at your base entrance, because if you're cycling or having a vehicle, you can actually get stuck, and it just looks bad. I mean, of course you can paint it. So if I do, let's see, what paint could I put in here that would actually look good? They removed the grass. I don't know why they did that. I like the grass one that they had previously. Now this is probably the closest that you can have. Fortunately, there's no dead grass. You can do something like this, but it doesn't look that good. But what you can do is that you can go and select sheet. That's what I did. I selected this one, and then I do advanced. I rotate until it's at the bottom, and I put it down. Let's say I want to have all this to be sort of gravel. I can paint that. Now you don't get that weird edge, but you notice as well that if I put one down to like here, you have this weird, here it looks straight, which is all right, and here it doesn't. Of course, I might want to do gravel. I want to change that out here as well. You know, it will go a little bit like that, but that's all right. It'll look a little bit more organic, at least the way it sort of goes from this kind of gravel to this gravel. It's interesting that it's actually not exactly the same texture. Does that match? No, it doesn't match. It's like two different gravel types. Really weird, actually. Because this is the old gravel. Maybe this is the new gravel. Maybe they need to change that over. But at least it looks better. But you notice here, you have that gap because this one has a slightly different height. What you can do is that you can get these kind of frames and everything, and you just place them around here. And what that does is basically raising everything to be the same height, and you remove it. Now you see everything is the same height here. And if I then do the same thing, I take it out and like that, and I put it in. Again, you have something that looks a lot more organic. And of course, here, that's why I would take that out as well, just to make sure that it looks better. It's one way to just get rid of that ugly, ugly transition, otherwise from the kind of diamond shaped one terrain blocks to your regular blocks. Again, the textures are not fully matched. Oh, rainy day, but at least it's a lot better. And if you do it like concrete or something, you can make it look perfect as well. A tidbit here, in some previous versions, if you rotated the block, and I'm rotating this block, the texture would also rotate, but it doesn't seem to do that anymore. So if I put this one down, it's not going to change. I'd like to do that inside, actually. So rainy. I put this down and I rotate, you see the texture is still the same direction, and I find that a little bit annoying. You used to be able to rotate it and basically have the grain go the other direction. You can no longer do that, and that sometimes causes a problem. Let's say you have something like this. All of the planks are this way, but if you want to have them this way, there's no way to do that. You used to be able to just rotate the block before putting it down, and then you painted it, and that would solve itself. But here, unfortunately, I'm rotating and it's the same direction. Maybe they did to simplify it, but I wish they would put that back, because I found that really useful when you had some textures that are specifically in one direction with the planks, like you can see here, that I can't change it to being this way. It's always going to be this way. There's also a complaint about the textures, that there's insufficient clean textures, and this has been changed over the alphas we have right now, 174. Earlier alphas had a lot more clean textures. Unfortunately, they've changed them out to these scrappy ones. If I paint this one, you see, I just made this paint. I whipped it together and I'm painting. Why does it look so old? Look, this green, and I just can't use it. Even the blue, no, it's just terrible. Oh, I mean, I can't use these easily in a build because they look horrible. Some of them still look good. The purple one is really nice. Pink one is nice, but a lot of them unfortunately are not. They have like these scuffs on it, which I really don't like. I wish they would give us more clean textures, even if it required, I don't know, extra GPU RAM for them to pull that off, because we're severely limited by just having crappy textures. I know they changed things out, and I know there's some technical reasons behind it, but I wish they would overcome that. And I didn't spend that much time actually painting up the house. And of course, it looks a lot better than it did previously. It's not perfect, it's not done, but you can see the difference from before and after. Concrete, dull, gray, and at least a little bit more color, both in and out. I would like to thank all of you who support the channel. Even if you just watch to the end, like, comment, and share it. It all helps me grow and reach a larger audience. If you would like more ways to support, I invite you to join me on patreon.com/Vedui42 and signing up, or why not become a YouTube member by hitting the join button below the video or on the channel page. It's all greatly helpful in enabling me to make these videos every week for your viewing pleasure. I also, of course, have a Twitter at twitter.com/Vedui42 that you can follow for news, and why not join my Discord? Link will be in the description. Take care, now go paint your base, make it look better.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the Vedui community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.